98%. That's how much of an astronaut's urine gets recycled into drinking water right now on the International Space Station today as we're talking. And on Mars, that number goes up because on Mars, water is more valuable than food, more valuable than almost anything. Your crewmates don't get a choice about it. You don't get a choice. Every drop that leaves your body comes back around. And the question nobody really asks, the one that sounds embarrassing but is actually one of the hardest engineering problems in the entire mission, is this. How does a toilet even work when gravity is only 38% of what your body was built for? Today we're going through all of it, the physics, the plumbing, the gas, the psychology, and by the end, you're going to look at your bathroom at home completely differently. But first, let's talk about what 38% gravity actually means for something as basic as sitting down. Here's the thing. On Earth, gravity does a lot of quiet, invisible work for you in the bathroom. You don't think about it. Nobody thinks about it. But the moment you remove 62% of it, everything that gravity was silently handling becomes your problem. Waste falls, water drains, liquids behave. All of that happens on Earth because 9.8 meters per second squared is pulling everything down, constantly, no exceptions. On Mars, that number is 3.7, enough to keep you on the ground, enough to keep a cup from floating off a table, but not enough, not even close, to make a standard toilet work the way it should. Think about pouring honey to a glass. On Earth, it flows down, it settles, done. Now imagine someone turned the dial from normal to slightly broken. The honey still goes down, but it's slow, it hesitates. It clings to the sides in ways it wasn't supposed to. That's water in a Mars toilet, hesitant, lazy, reluctant to go where you need it to go. But that's not even the scary part. Water on Mars is not just a flushing problem. It's a survival currency. The entire planet has water, frozen in the poles, locked in the soil. But accessible, usable, drinkable water is something a Mars crew carries with them or extracts at enormous cost. So the mission designers made a decision that sounds simple until you actually sit with it. Nothing leaves the loop. Not urine, not sweat, not the moisture in your breath. All of it gets caught, processed, filtered, and cycled back. The ISS already does this 98% urine recovery, and the system has been running for years. On Mars, the goal is higher. Closer to 100, because you can't just call a resupply ship. You can't. The nearest resupply is, at minimum, 6 months away by the fastest trajectory we currently know how to fly. And that's if the planets are aligned correctly, which they are only once every 26 months. Sounds manageable, right? A closed water loop. Just engineering, just filtration. Except your body isn't just producing liquid. There's something else happening inside you on Mars that nobody in the public conversation talks about. And I mean nobody. Your gut produces gas constantly. That's just biology. Bacteria in your intestines break down food and release hydrogen, methane, carbon dioxide. On Earth, this is most in lower gravity. Gas bubbles in your digestive system behave differently. They don't rise and separate as cleanly. That means more gas stays mixed with liquid longer, which changes how your body processes it, which changes what gets released and when. The total gas output per person per day isn't dramatically different, but the timing, the distribution, the behavior of that gas in a sealed environment, different enough to matter. Now scale that to 6 people for 2 years in a box. The air filtration system on a Mars habitat has to account for every molecule of methane and hydrogen sulfide that 6 human digestive systems produce around the clock, with zero margin for a bad filter day. From one person's gut bacteria to the lungs of the entire crew. You'd think the engineers just design a better filter and move on. Nope, the problem isn't just chemical. It's architectural. A Mars habitat's life support system has to do several things at once: scrub carbon dioxide, manage oxygen levels, control humidity, filter particulates, and now also handle the continuous biochemical output of a living crew, including waste gases, skin cells, hair, and everything else a human body sheds every single day. And the toilet sits at the center of all of this. On Earth, a toilet is a dead-end system. Waste goes in, waste goes away. Water refills, done. No relationship between your toilet and your drinking glass. On Mars, those two things are the same system, the same loop. Think about the last glass of water you drank without thinking about it. Cold, clear. You didn't wonder where it came from. You just drank it. Now imagine you knew, not suspected, but knew, that 3 days ago that water was urine. Could you drink it? The IS astronauts can. They do. But it took training. It took what psychologists call disgust adaptation. And that adaptation is, surprisingly, not guaranteed. And there's one thing about this system that the engineers haven't fully solved yet, and it has nothing to do with machinery. The human brain has a disgust response that evolved over millions of years specifically to keep us away from biological waste. It is one of the most deeply wired instincts we have, more persistent than hunger, more automatic than fear. And on Mars, you have to override it every single day for 2 years. Studies done on ISS crews show that the psychological hurdle of drinking recycled urine, even after being told repeatedly that it is chemically cleaner than most municipal tap water on Earth, never fully disappears for some individuals. It fades, it becomes background noise, but it doesn't vanish. And that is an engineering problem, because a crew member who refuses to drink enough water because of psychological aversion to its source is a crew member heading toward dehydration, impaired cognition, and mission failure. Can you train your brain to stop caring where the water came from? Most people can, some people can't, and the selection process for a Mars crew has to account for that. The toilet is a psychological screening tool as much as a plumbing problem. Now forget the psychology for a second. Let's talk about what an actual Mars toilet looks like, because it is nothing like what you have at home. Zero similarities. A Mars toilet uses airflow instead of water to move waste. A gentle suction, powered by the habitat's air circulation system, pulls everything in the right direction, compensating for the gravity that isn't there. Liquid and solid waste get separated at the point of collection, because the processing systems for each are completely different. Urine goes directly into the water recovery loop. Solid waste is a harder problem. On the ISS, solid waste gets packed and eventually burns up when resupply vehicles deorbit into Earth's atmosphere, a solution that is spectacular in its bluntness. On Mars, you don't have that option. The current leading approach involves desiccation, drying the waste out completely, followed by either long-term storage or potential use as radiation shielding. Yes, the walls of a Mars habitat might literally be lined with processed human waste compacted into bricks, and I'm not even exaggerating. Researchers at the University of Florida published work on this concept. It works, but so does, even wilder, using it as fertilizer, assuming the right biological processing chain is in place. So problem solved? Not exactly, because we've been talking about one toilet, one crew, one mission. Now scale it. A Mars colony, not a mission. A colony means dozens of people, then hundreds, then potentially thousands, all running the same closed-loop biology, all producing waste that has to go somewhere useful. The toilet stops being a toilet and starts being a node in a planetary resource network. Human waste becomes feedstock, input for bioreactors, raw material for soil amendment. The thing you flush without thinking becomes a critical part of the food production cycle of an entire civilization. From 6 astronauts in a box to a million-person city on another planet, the math runs through the same pipe. Wild, I know. But here's where everything actually lands. The toilet is the most honest symbol of what a Mars mission really is. It's not rockets. It's not spacesuits. It's the acknowledgement that human biology doesn't pause for adventure. Your body keeps doing what bodies do, and every mission has to be designed around that from day one, with zero exceptions and zero room for squeamishness. So let's close the loop. The question we opened with: how does a toilet work when gravity is 38% and water is worth more than gold? The answer is, it doesn't. Not a normal one. You replace water with airflow. You separate liquids from solids mechanically. You run urine through a multi-stage filtration system that uses heat, membranes, and catalytic oxidation to produce water that is chemically cleaner than what comes out of most taps on Earth. You store or repurpose solid waste in ways that would have seemed science fiction 30 years ago. You train your crew to override a disgust instinct that evolution spent millions of years installing. And you build a machine, the entire habitat, that treats every molecule a human body releases as a resource, not a problem. After one day on Mars, your urine is already back in the water tank. After 1 week, you've stopped thinking about it. After 1 month, it's just water. After 2 years, you land back on Earth, turn on a tap, and for just a second, you wonder what's in this one. Here's what I keep coming back to. We talk about Mars in the language of heroism, rockets, courage, the final frontier, and all of that is real. But the actual daily reality of living on another planet is a closed bathroom on a Tuesday morning with 5 other people, 34 million miles from the nearest spare part. The romance and the plumbing exist in the same 4 walls, and somehow the plumbing is harder, If this is the kind of thing that keeps you up at night in the best possible way, the science hiding inside things nobody wants to talk about, you know what to do. There's someone right now in the comments who has an opinion about this that I genuinely want to read. Drop it. And if you want more videos where we take something embarrassing and turn it into something that makes your brain short circuit, you know where the button is.